In the bustling cities and port towns of the ancient world, commerce thrived in every imaginable form that included the oldest profession, prostitution. While much of what we know today about ancient sex work is filtered through the biases and fragmentary records of the past, historians and archaeologists have uncovered a surprisingly rich array of evidence for how prostitutes in ancient societies advertised their services, made themselves visible, and attracted clients. Far from being hidden away in the shadows, sex workers often operated openly, deploying creative methods of self-promotion that ranged from the subtle to the spectacular. To understand how ancient prostitutes advertised themselves, we must first consider the social and legal status of sex work in different civilizations. In ancient Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, Egypt, and even parts of Asia, prostitution was often a recognized, if sometimes stigmatized, profession. This meant that, in many places, prostitutes were permitted, sometimes even required, to operate in public, to pay taxes, and to make their presence known. The ways in which they did so varied according to time and place, but several common strategies emerge. Let's begin in ancient Mesopotamia, one of the earliest cradles of civilization. In cities like Babylon and Ur, sex work was not only tolerated, but in some contexts integrated into religious ritual. Temples dedicated to goddesses, such as Inanna or Ishtar, sometimes included sacred prostitutes, whose role was seen as a form of spiritual service. While the distinction between purely sacred and secular sex work is debated by scholars, it is clear that brothels called houses of pleasure, or houses of joy, existed as commercial establishments. Prostitutes might advertise themselves simply by their presence at the entrances to these brothels, which were often located in hypertrophic areas, near marketplaces or city gates. Moving forward in time and westward in geography, the ancient Greeks provide some of the most colorful evidence for self-promotion among prostitutes. In the cosmopolitan city of Athens, prostitution was legal and regulated. There were different classes of sex workers, ranging from the lowly porno-street prostitutes, or brothel workers, to the highly educated and sophisticated or courtesans. The pornae, whose services were generally inexpensive, often worked in brothels or plied their trade on the streets. Archaeological finds from the Athenian port of Piraeus and the city itself suggest that brothels were marked with phallic symbols, sometimes carved into the stone at the entrance or painted on the walls. These symbols served as unmistakable advertisements, drawing the attention of But what about the prostitutes themselves? According to ancient texts and artwork, streetwalkers sometimes wore distinctive clothing to set themselves apart. They might don revealing garments or bright colors, such as yellow shawls, which were not typical of respectable women. This visual differentiation was itself a form of advertisement. The Greek comic playwright Aristophanes mocks prostitutes for their flamboyant dress and heavy makeup, while Athenian legal texts refer to the practice of sex workers wearing conspicuous jewelry or even special sandals. It is in the matter of footwear that we find one of the most ingenious advertising techniques of the ancient world. Some sources suggest that prostitutes wore sandals with words or symbols carved into the soles. As they walked through the dusty streets of Athens, these sandals would leave imprints behind them, sometimes spelling out messages like "Follow me." In effect, these women were using the city's very ground as a billboard, creating a trail for potential customers to follow. The hetairai, or courtesans, engaged in subtler forms of advertisement. Renowned for their wit, education, and conversational skills, they circulated in elite social circles and attracted clients through reputation and word of mouth. Banquets, symposiums, and festivals provided opportunities for hetairai to display their talents and charm, and their fame often preceded them. Moving to ancient Rome, we encounter a society that was both permissive and prudish about sex work. Prostitution was legal but subject to regulation. Brothels, called lupenaria, were a common sight in Roman cities, especially in busy commercial districts and near the city as many baths. Roman prostitutes, like their Greek counterparts, often used clothing as a form of advertisement. The law required registered prostitutes to wear the toga, a garment otherwise reserved for men and for women of questionable repute. This distinctive dress made them instantly recognizable. Roman brothels were often marked by phallic symbols, paintings, or graffiti. Customers seeking entertainment could easily spot these establishments by their suggestive decoration. In Pompeii, the ruins famously preserve both brothel buildings and the graffiti scrawled by patrons and workers alike. Some inscriptions are crude advertisements. Here, you can find the best service for 2 coins, or Myrtis is the best girl in town. Such graffiti not only attracted clients, but also served as a kind of competitive marketing among sex workers. Roman prostitutes also made use of personal branding. Some developed nicknames or pseudonyms that became well known in the city. These names could be witty, alluring, or even humorous. Clarice, Cytheris, and would be spread through word of mouth, graffiti, or the circulation of poetry and stories. The fame of certain courtesans was such that they were celebrated in literature, immortalized in the works of poets like Ovid and Martial. Other advertising methods were more interactive. Streetwalkers might approach men directly, using flirtation, banter, or even song to engage potential clients. In the busy fora and marketplaces, sex workers would call out to passersby, sometimes using coded language or innuendo. The Roman satirist Juvenal describes the raucous atmosphere of the Subura, a district notorious for its nightlife, where women and men alike offered their services openly. Across the Mediterranean and Egypt, prostitution was also a recognized profession. In major cities like Alexandria, brothels and taverns often went hand in hand. Some scholars believe that prostitutes might have advertised their services in the windows or doorways of these establishments, using gestures, eye contact, or even objects such as garlands, scarves, or particular types of lamps to signify their availability. In some cases, musicians, dancers, and sex workers overlapped in their roles, and performances at public festivals or private parties could serve as both entertainment and advertisement. In the ancient Near East and parts of Asia, similar patterns emerge. In some Indian cities, for example, courtesans known as Ganikas or Nagarvadu were celebrated figures, renowned for their beauty, intelligence, and artistic skill. These women would advertise themselves not only through their appearance, but also through public performances of music and dance. Temples sometimes employed who performed ritual dances and were associated, sometimes controversially, with sacred sexuality. Public festivals, religious processions, and the strategic use of jewelry, cosmetics, and elaborate hairstyles all served to draw attention. Throughout the ancient world, location was itself a powerful form of advertisement. Brothels, taverns, and red light districts were strategically placed along busy streets, near ports, or close to arenas, theaters, and baths, places where crowds gathered and opportunities abounded. The architecture of brothels sometimes included open courtyards or windows, through which potential clients could glimpse the women inside. In Pompeii, for instance, brothels featured small, plainly furnished rooms with doors opening directly onto the street or a central hallway, making the services on offer immediately apparent. For those who could afford it, word of mouth remained the gold standard of advertising. Satisfied clients would recommend a particular prostitute or brothel to friends, and the reputations of the most skilled or beautiful women spread rapidly. Some courtesans became celebrities in their own right, their names known across cities and even empires. Of course, not all forms of advertising were voluntary. Enslaved prostitutes, or those under the control of pimps or brothel owners, had little say in how they promoted themselves. Inscriptions, graffiti, and literary accounts sometimes highlight the exploitation and hardship faced by these individuals. Yet even within such constraints, sex workers found ways to assert their identity, whether through humor, artistry, or the cultivation of a unique persona. Cosmetics and personal grooming played a vital role in self-promotion. Ancient prostitutes often used perfumes, oils, and makeup more liberally than respectable women. Heavily kohled eyes, rouged cheeks, and scented hair signaled both availability and allure. In societies where modesty was prized for proper women, such displays were both a mark of profession and a form of advertisement. Art and literature from the ancient world offer further glimpses into the advertising tactics of sex workers. Vase paintings, mosaics, and sculptures sometimes depict women in provocative poses or engaged in banter with male customers. The comedies of Aristophanes, Plautus, and Terence are filled with sly references to the tricks and strategies of prostitutes. Roman poets like Ovid and Catullus immortalized the charms, wiles, and heartbreaks of courtesans in verse, blurring the line between fact and fiction. Despite the differences in culture and custom, certain themes recur throughout history. Visibility was key, whether through dress, location, symbols, performance, or word of mouth. Humor, wit, and creativity were assets, as were physical appearance and personality. The best sex workers were not only skilled at their craft, but also adept at reading and manipulating the social currents of their time. In the end, the story of how ancient prostitutes advertised themselves is a story of ingenuity and resilience. Against the backdrop of cities teeming with life, amid the clash of commerce and morality, these women and sometimes men found ways to be seen, to attract attention, and to carve out a living in a world that was often both fascinated by and ambivalent about them. Their voices, though often faint, echo across the centuries, reminding us that the art of self-promotion is as old as civilization itself.